Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started with our second session of the day. You are at the Stakeholder Integration Virtual Conference, and we're going to be talking about locking into prisons as stakeholders. And our presenter today is Tammy Alexander, and she's Adult Education Director at Howard College Permian Basin, and that is in Big Spring, Texas. And this is session 2, and my name is Olga Escamilla, and I'm your host. And we have Anne-Marie Molinari, who will be assisting. We also have Laura Greer from the office, and Mia Conrad is on. And Deborah Hargrove is also on from our office, and Elizabeth Moya. So I thank you all. Thank you, our participants, Brenda, Latricia, and for attending, for being on. And I'm hoping that we'll get some more attendees logging in shortly. So at this time, I would like to welcome my presenter and welcome Tammy Alexander. Again, Tammy is employed with Howard College Permian Basin. She's been there for 14 years in adult education and literacy, and she's been the director of AEL, or Adult Education and Literacy, since 2010. She holds a bachelor's degree in organizational management and is a certified manager in program improvement. Tammy, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Like Ola said, I'm Tammy Alexander, and I'm the director here at Howard College. I kind of feel like I'm talking to myself. This is my first webinar, so be patient with me. Ask lots of questions. I'll answer all of them as best I can. So just a little start off. In Howard County, which is where I am, we have 4 federal prisons. One of them is a federal prison that's run by the Bureau of Prisons, and the other 3 are contracted prisons that are run by a private company named GEO. We normally have classes at all the prisons. We have one right now that we don't have classes at, but we're looking to start again next year. So right now we're at all 3 of the private prisons, and we provide high school equivalency classes, ESL classes, and reentry classes. We've been in the prison since 1986. And just a little tidbit for anyone else that may be at a community college. Howard College also provides vocational programs at the prison, and they actually have the largest vocational correctional program in the state. And Howard College collects over 360,000 contact hours per year at the prison. So if you're at a community college, that is a great opportunity if you don't have that going yet. So some best practices, let's get the good stuff out of the way first. We're going to maintain close contact with the wardens and the prison staff. That's your most important thing that you can do out there, because they're going to tell you what's going on. They're going to put students in your classroom, and so that's what you always want. And they're going to let you aware of any new rules and regulations that they may have. You do have to set very clear expectations of the students, just like you do in the outside world. We have 2 different worlds. We have the inside world, which is the prisons, and the outside world, which is all of our other students. So you have to set clear expectations. They do tend to be more attentive than regular students, and they have much better attendance rates, because that's what they have to do is they go to school, and they get good time for being in class. So they potentially get time off their sentence. And then you have to work with the prisons to determine a set of student rules, because you have your rules and they have theirs. And we can't have ink pens in the prison because they can take them and make tattoo guns out of them. You can't have, or a protractor or anything metal. You can't have metal rulers. You can't have the folders with the little tabs in them. So you got to really watch what you have. One prison doesn't let us take stickers out there because they may do something to the stickers. So it's just a different thing. And the last thing is kind of unexpected, but distance learning works really well in the prisons. And I'll get into that a little bit more in a few slides. So here it is. Distance learning is, we use paper-based distance learning. So the students can do distance learning when the teacher is out, or we often just supplement the work in the classroom with it too. They can take it to their bunk. If they're in the same class together and they're in the same rooms, they're in the same general area, they help each other. And the Other inmates see the students learning, and it encourages them to want to join class. So you get more students out of it. The things that we use out there, we use Crossroads Cafe, English for All, GED Connections. We don't use Madison Heights and Lifeline that much, but sometimes we do. Pre-GED Connections and Workplace Essential Skills. It really works well, especially when we are on lockdown. I have one prison right now that is on lockdown, and we can't have classes out there right now, so the students will do distance learning instead of going to class. Well, actually, I don't have classes in any of my prisons because we're having water problems right now. There's no water. So they're all doing distance learning. It really helps. Sometimes it's bad, and they'll be locked down for 2 weeks for fighting or something. So the students can still gain hours as we can't have class out there. But most of the students in the classroom are not a problem whatsoever, because the inmates that are a problem don't want to be in class. So it's usually our teachers have no worries being out there. We garner lots of hours and lots of progress from prison students. So does anyone have any questions so far?
Oh, Brenda, you had a question?
Yes, I was just wondering what types of prisons. I'm assuming you're not in a Wyndham system. Is it a federal prison?
No, they're all federal prisons.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, they're all federal prisons. We're not dealing with Wyndham or any of that. We're just dealing with the feds. And in fact, this is a little tidbit I didn't throw out there, but the prisons actually pay me to pay my teacher's salary to be out there, so I don't have to use my grant money for them. I use my grant money to support them with PD and with supplies and things like that, but I don't actually pay my teacher's salaries with it. So it's a big help to me. And then, see, Anne-Marie says, what do you do for GED graduation or when they get to celebrate? We just had some well, we don't get the GED out there, we get the high set, but we just had some high set completers at 3 prisons, and they do have a ceremony. I mean, one place it was only 1 completer for the month, but they do have even if that the prisons make a cake, they play pomp and circumstance, they put on the cap and the gown, they take pictures, they give the inmate the picture to send home. And I mean, it's not a great big thing like you would do in the outside world, but we do celebrate it, and it encourages the other students. So let's go back to the detail of the distance learning. Of course, we use Crossroads Cafe and English for All in our ESL classes, and whatever they just kind of go along through it. For distance learning, we probably use English for All the most, and then kind of when they outgrow English for All or when they've completed all of them, we'll go to Crossroads Cafe. So basically they have a video that they can take back and they can watch as a group, and then they do the exercises, and they write their answers down on a piece of notebook paper, and they turn it into the teacher where it's graded and then turned into us, and we keep the notebook paper with the answers in their file. And that's how that's turned into hours. And that's pretty much how all of our paper-based distance learning options work. And it also works really well with our students on the outside. We figure we get more distance learning hours out of students that do the paper-based than any online curricula that we've used. I don't know why, but we did find that.
Tammy, there is a question from Elizabeth Moya. She says, I'm familiar with English for All, but which DL curriculum would you say works best?
I would say for ESL, it is English for All as far as paper-based goes. And then you can go to Crossroads Cafe when you complete that English for All, if they do it all. And then for the GED, most of them, it's the pre-GED connections. By the time they get up to the GED connections, they're kind of already completing. So if we're doing fractions in the classroom, we give them the fractions pre-GED connections to take home with them, that kind of thing. Or if, whatever subject we're doing in science, we give them that to take home. That way, we don't do actually a lot of science and social studies in the classroom. We do a little bit, but most of that is done with the take-home packets. And it seems to work pretty well. with that. Elizabeth, did that answer everything you needed?
While we're waiting for Elizabeth, Brenda says, approximately how many average hours per week are your classes held? And also, is there a particular time of day that works best for classes? And Liz says, yes, thank you.
Well, Brenda, it depends on which prison it is on the hours per week, because they all kind of have their own schedule, but it's anywhere from 4 to 6 hours a week per class. And it really just works around the prison schedule, because there's certain times of day, like one prison does a count at 8, and then they have to line everybody else up and do another count at like 10:45. So we have a class between 8 and 10:45, and then they go to lunch, and then we have another class in the 2 in the afternoon. So we just flow with whatever fits with that prison, because they have so many other rules that they have to follow.
Okay, Deborah, did you have a question? And Brenda?
I did. I was just going to ask, the TCAL library has a couple of these programs on DVD or VHS, and I wasn't sure if you all needed any extra copies, or if anybody on the webinar today might need a copy. I think we might have 1 extra or 2 extra copies of some of these items. I wanted to bring it to your attention. And then I wanted to ask Tammy, and I might have missed it if somebody already asked it, so what gains have you seen doing the DL this way?
What gains? I mean, we do the DL this way outside of class too, pretty much. It's not as strong outside of class, but we do a lot of it too outside of class. And we do see gains. We see, I can't throw numbers at you right now, but we do see a lot of gains, especially when we pair it up with what we do in class. When we're doing fractions in class and then they do fractions at home, it really helps it sink in, and they kind of move through faster.
Brenda said, before you go, Brenda says, thank you. We have classes in the county jail, and scheduling classes takes quite a bit of effort.
It does. You really have to work around the prisons or the jail's needs, because they have so many rules that they must follow. So then we have rules that we have to follow, and you've got to find where those two meet in the middle. So reentry classes. So, in our grant, we have to either have, let me get it right, reentry or ESL for professionals or workplace literacy classes. One of those 3, we have numbers that we have to meet. So what we do, and what it works out really well for us, is we have reentry classes. This is our first year doing them, kind of off-shot currently, so it's our pilot year. So I only have it at 1 prison. It's the prison that my strongest teacher's in. It has been a great success so far. All of the students at these federal contract prisons have less than 5 years remaining on their sentence, so they're actually all eligible for the reentry class. And we cover a variety of topics in the class. And as you know, with these programs, you get a little bit more cost per student, so that's always nice for your grant. So some of the topics that we cover in reentry are financial skills, interview skills, places that may be able to offer assistance after they're released, coping skills, family skills. So, anything really that we want to offer any student, we pretty much is covered in these reentry classes. Is there a particular curriculum? We have a whole bunch of curriculum that is this chapter from this thing and this from that thing. And so we don't have one particular curriculum. It's kind of like we threw together the best of what we had. Some of what we use a lot are some books that we've had for a while, and they're from Steck Vaughn, and they're called Start Smart, and they have financial literacy components. They have test preparation strategies, which isn't part of reentry, but it is part of other classes. They have communication strategies. They have financial strategies, but that's part of what we use is that Start Smart from Steck Vaughn. We also use some of the ICA's, old ICA curriculum, So that helps also.
So you said Start Smart?
Start Smart. It's a Steck Vaughn product. I'm not even sure. Is Steck Vaughn still in business?
No. I
I
mean,
didn't think so.
they are through Paxton, I believe. But you
It's
mentioned the test taking skills, that critical thinking and things like that. Those are employability skills, so they're still very important to cover.
right, they are. So I said, most of these topics in this reentry class we actually cover with all students anyway, but some of this is focusing on like how to cope when you get back with your family, and because it is a change going from prison to family or prison to alone or whatever, and so it does take some extra coping to get there. But yeah, a lot of these skills we cover with all of our students, and the ICA curriculum. I think everyone's probably familiar with that.
Anne Marie says, do you see a high need for basic literacy instruction for the students, and what curriculum do you use?
Yes, we do need basic literacy instruction. A lot of our students start off in the ESL classroom and move into the GED classroom. We still use, for the basics, we still use number power from contemporary a lot for the really low students to get them up. And then we're using some of the Common Core books from McGraw-Hill, the Common Core Achieve book. And then when they get into a higher level, we have the Kaplan Big Blue books for the high set, the Big Blue thick books from Kaplan. And we have a lot of just extra books that for when someone needs help with one particular thing and they're not getting it, we have a lot of reference books that we can also refer to. But we don't hardly get any inmates that come in and they're on the ASE level. Most of them come in on levels 2 to 3, if I was guessing. In fact, it's levels 2 and 3, I'm looking at our numbers right now, have the most students in them. Yeah, 2nd or 4th grade, where most inmates come in, that or in ESL.
Thank you, Tammy. So one of the things I was looking at is I was looking up the Start Smart online, and they do have them available through like Amazon and Thrift Books and Barnes and Noble. So they're still out there. They have a goal setting strategies book. So that's a really good resource. Those are still really good resources for the skills that you're teaching. So thank you for mentioning that. It's important for us to not forget about those resources that existed before.
Right. Yeah, we have a hard time getting rid of things around here. I'm sure most of y'all remember Debbie Klepper, but when she left and I took over, we had to do some downsizing, and I actually got rid of some things from 1972-ish. So we just, having things that are 10 years old, we're still good with. But we love those Start Smart books. They have a lot of good information. The test preparation strategies is really good if you have anyone with test anxiety or anything like that to kind of get them through it. Some of the difficulties in correction, staffing. So you have to find staff that can pass a background check and a credit check. You have to have good credit to work at a prison, because they think if you owe someone a lot of money or you're behind on stuff that you would be tempted to take a payoff and do something that you shouldn't do. Not everyone's made to work in a prison, so you have to be very picky when you're choosing a staff. A lot of times, the first time someone walks in that prison and they hear that gate slide shut behind them, they have a little freak out. And so it's not for everyone. You really need to have someone that's conservative. You can't really have anyone that, is not going to dress appropriately or anything like that. You've got to be very conservative, very strong on their morals, because they will be tempted. They will be asked to do things that they shouldn't do, and they've got to be able to say no. And the other part about staffing is that clearance can take up to 6 months to get. So I had a teacher at a prison that retired in January. So that's January, this is February, March, April, May. The new teacher started a week ago. So there was actually a very fast clearance process. It only took 3 months instead of 6. So you will lose time there when someone is no longer with you. Prisons are very unpredictable. Lockdowns can happen at any time for any length of time. I think the longest I've had a prison lockdown was 45 days, which means my teachers are getting paid to sit at home for 45 days. They enjoy the free vacation, but then even there, they worry about their students, if they're learning anything. Of course, we're not collecting any hours unless they are doing the distance learning. And as we all know, even over summer break with kids, when you don't use it, you lose it. So when we come back, they've lost some progress that we have to make up. And sometimes the students aren't there when we come back because if it's been a major lockdown, they usually send a lot of prisoners out to different prisons. And just the next bullet is students can be sent to another prison at any time without warning. So it's really important that you get your progress test at that 40 or 60-hour mark because sometimes it just happens. And you walk in and you say, where is whoever? And they're like, oh, we sent them out. So you never know what's going to happen there, although I think it's a little bit more reliable than the students on the outside. Any questions about any of that?
Liz says, how is your performance affected during the lockdown situation? Is your program still held accountable for those targets?
Yes. My grant does not care if my inmates are locked down or not. So we hope that any prisoners that are sent out that when we come back from the lockdown have already been progress tested. That's our hope. So that's why as soon as they get that 40 hours or as soon as they get that 60 hours, we're calling them in after class or on Fridays to do those progress tests. So we can avoid that situation altogether. But the other thing is our classrooms do pretty much stay full out there. There's no classes are getting low or whatever. If someone leaves, they put another one in pretty much automatically. So we do keep full classrooms out there.
So, and you said you administer the TABE, Tammy?
Yes. We are currently doing the TABE 11 and 12 and the BEST Plus in literacy. I believe we're going to change that on July 1, but that's what we are currently doing. Because we're actually going to change the CASAS because our prisons already use CASAS for their own measures. So right now they're actually getting CASAS tested and TABE tested, and then for progress they're getting CASAS tested and TABE tested also. So that's going to cut down on some of that testing that they're having to go through if we switch to CASAS.
So if you switch to CASAS, do you have to administer it, or will you be able to accept their scores?
No, we will administer it because we're already doing that for the prison system anyway. Some more little struggles is it's hard to make sure that we meet all of our rules and that the prison meets all of their rules. I have one prison in particular that warden is really only concerned with his rules and his goals and what he needs and what he wants. And so it's a little rough patch there. He doesn't care about progress. All he cares is about final GED completions. That's his main goal. He doesn't care, and you have to explain to him this person came in on a second grade level. They're not going to be a completer in 30 days. So it takes a little bit to make sure that he understands that because it's not always as easy as he thinks it should be. We are trying to start an IEP program in the prison. We have been trying for 1.5 years, and we have not accomplished it yet. You would think it would be easy since we're out there and we have VT classes out there, but there's a lot of Bureau of Prison rules and things that we haven't been able to get over that hump yet. We hope to have it in place next year still. We're still working on it. So if a student is attending VT classes and AEL classes, there's no time for them to work. And all students want commissary money. I mean, they're only making 10 to 12 cents an hour, but they want that money for the commissary. And also the prisons get a credit when the students pass an HSE for the year. Well, they only get that credit for that 1 year.
Tammy, what's a VT class?
Vocational training. So it's, the welding class. What do we have out there? We have, one prison has welding. They have virtual welders. One has culinary. We have horticulture, business computers, carpentry, and then the actual federal prison has like 8 different things. So there's a lot of vocational classes on there that we're trying to get in with to do this IET, but there's a lot of things about inmate pay and when the prison gets performance credit if they can't get 2 in 1 year for the same student. So if they pass the HSC and get one, they have to wait to the next year for VT for them to get that one. So where we can count on the outside with the grant, we can say, yes, this person did his HSC completion and they got their certificate. Where with the prisons, they can only do 1 of those a year. So there's a little holdback on starting the IET programs out there. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's unfortunate though.
It is. It's very unfortunate because it would be the perfect place for IET programs, if you ask me. Perfect place. Are there any other questions out there? So I think I'm almost at the end, and I feel like I've talked really fast and gone through this really fast. I'm sorry, guys. It's my first one.
No, this is good. It's a lot of good questions, a lot of good conversation in terms of being able to process the information and ask questions of your program and how that works. I actually went to a tour of, I went to visit a Wyndham school district, and they have like a construction trades class where they build houses.
Mm-hmm.
And and it's a curriculum through the college, the Southwest Texas Community College. So they do actually get a certificate at the end of their, like a continuing education certificate at the end of their class time. So do you have anything like that? I know that sometimes it's hard for them to have these things, but at this prison they actually had the tools. The tools, but they're locked up in a room, and of course, and they have to be returned. But do they have any classes like that, Tammy, where the students learn building trades, or is it more of a less hands-on, more, like you said, the welding is simulated?
Yeah, the welding simulated, and that's the only thing that's simulated right now. At one point, there was a truck driving program, and that was simulated till the very end. But other than that, everything is, they do actually build buildings. They do dig holes and plant plants in the horticulture class. So the welding was the only thing, and the truck driving was the only simulated VT programs. Everything else is actual hands-on programs.
Very good. Thank you. And Deborah said that today, they had the Wyndham teachers from the Estelle unit visit the TCAL library today, so they're excited. So this was exciting to also have for your session, Tammy. So thank you again for sharing. Brenda says, have you had any problems being able to get the students tested with HiSET or GED?
We did have some problems for a while, and it was mainly on the prison's end. And now we have switched to HiSET, and we have gotten that ball rolling as of around the 1st of this year. And we have not had any problems since then using a paper-based HiSET testing. So that was a major factor going to HiSET, is they offered the paper-based option.
Brenda says they are having problems. Is that with GED or because it's computer-based, or?
We are making some progress with the HiSET, but the jail was not allowing the GED testing because it's an internet issue where they don't want students to have that. But the HiSET, with the paper version, we're coming along, but we have been trying to be the mediator between the jail and the testing center. And so that's just taking a little bit of time in getting those things scheduled, getting the HiSET scheduled. But I think it's much more doable than with GED, just because HiSET is a paper version.
Yeah, you're right. And I will say there is nothing about the correctional system that is fast. It doesn't matter what you're doing or how you're doing. There is nothing that's going to be fast. There's nothing that's going to be clear. But in the end, when you have everything running and it's all set up, it is very much worth it, and it's very rewarding to see.
Liz says, have the inmates shared any feedback on items they need or would like to learn aside from the topics that you have mentioned?
I don't know the answer to that question. If she's talking about vocational, I really don't know the answer to that question. If there's anything else that they need or would like to learn. They haven't mentioned anything to my teachers that they have shared with me, and the wardens have not shared anything with me also. We do have the most robust prison program in the nation, so it's a lot for them when they get transferred here. So I think they come here and they say, oh my gosh, you have all of this, and so they don't ask for more.
Liz said, I've worked with folks on probation or parole, and they have given us ideas. That's just why she was asking.
Yeah, I would be more than willing to hear those ideas, because I think it would be great. I always like new things and anything that we can do to further help our students.
Tammy, I have a question. I had
Go
my
ahead.
hand up. As far as collaboration when working with the prison and with the guards and the leadership at the prison, do you find that there was a lot of time that needed to be spent in developing the relationship? I'm wondering about that. I'm curious about that dynamic, because early on in my teaching career, I did have an opportunity to teach in the prisons myself, actually in the jail. And I'm wondering, and I found, at least for the first year, for the first couple months, it was, I would gently saying, antagonistic at best. So what have you done to build that partnership? Because I think it's wonderful to have the support. I'm glad to hear that.
Well, I will say that contractors, which is what our teachers are not looked at the same as prison staff, no matter which prison it is or where you go. There is a little bit of anxiety there. We've had some vocational teachers that have been in the prisons for 20 years, and they're still not quite treated the same as staff. They get on pretty good now, but not quite the same. There's always kind of a animosity there, but most of it goes by your warden and that relationship you have with your warden, because your guards are going to feed off that, how your warden feels about your employees and you. So I have all my prisons except for one right now. It's really good. It's a really good relationship. But I do have one warden that I work with, and it's a constant struggle because he has told me he really doesn't think education should be a part of the prison system, but it's required, so he has to have it. There is that animosity there at that one prison that we have to deal with a lot. Yeah, it is interesting that he has that attitude. I think he thinks they should be there and be on a chain gang all day and basically until their time is up and then sent home. Where we know and the numbers show that the more education the inmate gets, the less likely that recidivism will occur. So that's our main focus, is that once a student is out, that they stay out.
Exactly. Well, Tammy, thank you so much for sharing, and thank you all for attending.